So Judah approaches Joseph and gives him a background about the situation to explain why he's about to offer himself up as a guarantor for Benjamin, explaining that Benjamin had a brother who'd been torn to bits by wild animals, which, by the way, Joseph only learned right then. He never knew what the story was given or what happened after his sale into slavery at all. I think sometimes we forget that, and that Joseph wasn't really privy to what happened back at the Israelite camp after he was sold. Anyways, I want to open a parenthesis because there's a question that I've had many years and sometimes dabble at answering it. And I feel like this year I actually got a pretty good answer to it. And it seems sort of obvious, but the question is, why did Joseph never go back to his father Yaakov when he rose to power? He could have, or at least he could have sent word, right? Is this a question that any of you have thought of? That question, like why Joseph was living in the palace and Jacob is still suffering, why he didn't say anything? A lot of hands I see going up here. So a beautiful and I think seemingly obvious reason I encountered is because he knew that if he returned or even sent word, it would rip the family apart. It would come to light what the brothers did to him and casting him into the pit and selling him into slavery. And so to protect his brothers from abject humiliation and embarrassment, and that'd be the best of it, even from perhaps being disowned, he held his tongue. By the way, much like what his mother Rachel did for their mother, right? The brother's mother, Leah, when she shared the passwords to spare her humiliation and embarrassment. Well, and it's a little bit more than ironic that his brothers perceived him as a gossip-bearing tattletale that was constantly informing on them to their father. And here he was remaining in Egypt and estranged from his father and his family all these years in order not to tell on them. Does that reason like sort of resonate with you? It makes sense. Intuitively, what would you say?
I like that reason, but I just want to offer an alternative because it's
better
really
not be better
than
the reason I just shared.
It's not better, it's just the exact opposite. And it's okay because we can sort of hold both of those together and it just adds different dimensions to the story. But what Tehila and I were talking about over Shabbat is that it could be that Joseph thought that his father didn't want him. And that just like the way that Ishmael was sent off and the way that Esau was sort of cast away and not a part of the nation, that after Joseph had his, big dreams, the parents, he may thought like, wow, maybe I'm done with, like, my father did send me out alone. Why did he send me out to my brothers who he knew didn't like me? Maybe it was really a part of a familial plan, and I meant to be the Ishmael and the Esau of this family, and I meant to be cast out. So, okay, I'm cast out, and Hashem has a plan. Let me just say,
the reason I didn't share that, because I actually thought of it, wrote it up, thought it through, and then I cut it out, because it's so, it's just not true. Okay, Joseph knew his father loved him. He knew he was his favorite. His father, they had that relationship. The way I heard that reason is that he only exposed himself to his brothers and shared who he was. Once his brother Judah said, we had a brother that was ripped up by wild animals. And he never heard that before. He's like, that's what.
First of all, I really agree with what you're saying. It could be that yours, I don't know what the word true means because how will we know? But I do want to say, though, that Abraham loved Ishmael. He was really, really sad. He was upset with Sarah, and I think maybe even with God, that he was being commanded to send Ishmael away. Like, it could be that Jacob loved Joseph. That's not contested, but yet still, for whatever divine ordinance, because of the dreams, because Judah was supposed to be the leader, but Joseph was so much more competent, and maybe, I don't know what might have been aroused in his mind, but it's not fair to say that it's not a possibility. It really could be that Joseph didn't know, and he lived that entire time really feeling betrayed and lost to the whole family. It could be.
That could be, but I think it's pretty universally rejected, that opinion. At least I universally reject it. But that being said, when we're talking about casting blame, if I go over time, it's your fault, Jeremy. But I do encourage you to continue adding in because it makes it more fun and exciting. But I thought of sharing that idea, and I didn't because it just, to me, it's too out there, and it doesn't feel true to me. Anyways, so there was this situation that he didn't want to tell his father what happened to his brother. So what could redeem the seemingly irredeemable situation? Well, we see that in chapter 44, verses 32 and 33. It says, Ki avdecha arevet hana'ar. Yehuda explains to Joseph, who he of course fully believes is the Egyptian viceroy. He says, for your servant took responsibility for the youth from my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then I will have sinned to my father for all time. Now therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the youth as a servant to my Lord, and let the youth go up with his brothers. This was all Joseph needed to hear. This was it. This is the reason that he shared who he was at that point. At this point, it was clear that Judah, and by extension the brothers, had repented, not just with words, but truly repented. Because what is true repentance? As you said, Jeremy, what's tshuva gemura? True repentance is when you're placed in the same situation in which you once failed, in which you once sinned, and now you decide to take the path of righteousness, exactly opposite the path you took at the initial sin. And